There is a version of you that nobody has met yet. A version so focused, so disciplined, so quiet and powerful that people who once ignored you will not even recognize you when you return. But here is the question that most people are too afraid to ask themselves honestly. Are you willing to disappear for a while in order to become that person? Marcus Aurelius once sat alone in a military tent, surrounded by war, surrounded by chaos, and he wrote something not for the world, but entirely for himself. He wrote about who he wanted to become when the storm was finally over. He was not chasing approval. He was not posting his progress. He was engineering his soul in silence. What if the greatest transformation of your life has nothing to do with what the world sees, and everything to do with what you build when absolutely no one is watching? Stay with this video until the very end, because what comes next is something very few people will ever be told, and even fewer will have the courage to act on. Here is what modern life has done to you, and I say this with full understanding, not judgment. You wake up and before your mind has even fully arrived in the day, you are already checking your phone. You are already measuring your worth against the highlight reels of strangers. You are already feeling that slow, quiet ache of not being enough, not doing enough, not becoming enough. This is not weakness. This is what happens when a generation is trained to perform instead of grow. Social media sold us the idea that progress is only real if it is visible, that rest is laziness, that silence is failure. And so millions of people are constantly moving but going absolutely nowhere. They are busy but not building. They are loud but not powerful. You have felt it, haven't you? That hollow feeling after a day full of activity but completely empty of meaning. That exhaustion that sleep does not fix. That hunger for something deeper, something real, something that actually changes who you are at the core. Most people drown in this noise their entire lives and never find the shore. But you are still here, watching this, and that tells me something important about you. Something this video is about to confirm in a way that nothing else has. The Stoics understood something about human transformation that modern psychology is only now beginning to catch up with. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no freedom, no resources, no status whatsoever. And yet he became one of the most psychologically free human beings who ever lived. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." He did not wait for perfect conditions. He did not wait for the world to give him permission to grow. Seneca, writing from exile, said something that should cut straight through you. Retire into yourself as much as possible, not as an act of cowardice, but as an act of deliberate, dangerous self-construction. These men were not running from the world. They were preparing to return to it as something the world had never encountered before. They trained in silence. They built in solitude. And when they finally returned, they were completely unrecognizable. That is the code. That is exactly what this video is here to teach you today. Lesson 1. Solitude is the laboratory. The first lesson is this: solitude is not loneliness. It is the laboratory of greatness. And almost nobody realizes this in time. There is a reason the greatest minds in history did their most important work in isolation. Newton discovered the laws of gravity during a plague lockdown when the universities had shut and the world had gone quiet. Darwin spent years alone on a ship and in a private study before he ever showed the world what he had discovered. The pattern is not coincidence. It is deliberate design. The world pulls your attention outward constantly, and every time it succeeds, it steals a piece of the person you were genuinely meant to become. When you train alone, something fundamental shifts inside you. There is no audience to perform for, so you stop performing and you start becoming. Your standards stop being about what looks impressive and start being about what actually works, what actually sticks, what actually builds. You discover what you are truly made of, not in the moments when people are watching, but in the moments when you could stop and no one would ever know. and you choose to keep going anyway. That is where real character is built. Not in the gym mirror, not in the comment section, in the quiet, brutal honesty of a moment when only you know whether you gave everything or held something back. Ask yourself right now, honestly, when was the last time you gave your full effort to something that absolutely no one else would ever see? That answer will tell you everything about the distance between who you are and who you are capable of becoming. Lesson 2. Suffering is the method. The second lesson will hurt a little, and that is exactly how you know it is real. Most people spend their entire lives running from pain, but the Stoics did something radical with it. They moved toward it, not because they were broken or reckless, because they understood something profound that permanently changes everything. Once you truly see it, suffering is not the enemy of transformation. It is the very method of it. Amor fati, love your fate. Not merely tolerate it, not just survive it, love it completely. Marcus Aurelius lost children, faced betrayal from those he trusted, governed an empire while his own body was quietly failing him, and he never once asked why this was happening to him. He asked what this was teaching him. That is the entire difference between someone who is destroyed by hard seasons and someone who is forged by them. The version of you that trains alone when no one is watching, that studies alone when the noise of the world is calling, that sits in real discomfort without reaching for distraction. That person is not suffering uselessly. That person is being deliberately built. Every early morning when you wanted to stay in bed, but you rose anyway, was a brick. Every evening you chose a book over a scroll was a brick. Every time you sat with your loneliness, instead of numbing, it was a brick laid in silence. And one day, without warning, a wall becomes visible. A fortress becomes visible. And the person standing inside, it looks back at who they used to be and feels something words can barely hold. It is closer to recognition than pride. Like finally meeting yourself for the very first time. Lesson 3, presence, is the power. The third lesson is where most people get completely lost, even the ones who have already understood the first two. And this is precisely why many never find the peace they are searching for. They train hard, they suffer well, but they never learn to be truly present inside their own life. They are always living in the echo of yesterday's failure or the anxiety of tomorrow's uncertainty. And so even their growth begins to feel hollow, because they are never actually there to experience it as it happens. The Stoics called it prasos, self-attention, the practice of being fully awake, inside your own life, inside your own mind, inside this exact moment as it is right now. Not performing presence for an audience, actually inhabiting it completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this with an urgency that still feels startlingly modern thousands of years later. He reminded himself again and again that the present moment is all we ever actually possess, that the mind which wanders into fear or regret has abandoned the only ground it can ever truly stand on. When you study alone in a quiet room, when you train without music or noise or the constant stimulation the modern world demands, you are practicing something ancient and almost entirely forgotten. You are practicing the art of being genuinely awake. And a person who is truly awake carries a stillness that others feel before they even speak a single word. That stillness is not emptiness. It is power. Quiet, unshakable, immovable power. Lesson 4, character is built in the dark. The fourth lesson is the one that ties everything together, and it is also the one that very few people are willing to truly live. When the moment arrives, character is not what you claim. It is not what you post. It is not the version of yourself you carefully perform for others. Character is what remains when everything external is completely stripped away. And the only way to genuinely build it is through the unglamorous, repetitive, invisible work of daily discipline. Epictetus said that you become what you repeatedly do. Not what you repeatedly intend. Not what you repeatedly plan with great enthusiasm. What you actually do in the silence of your own life when no one is keeping score. Every single day, in private, you are either reinforcing the identity of the person you want to become, or you are quietly eroding it. There is no neutral ground anywhere in this process. Every choice is a vote. Every habit is a quiet declaration of who you are becoming. The person who trains alone when they could easily take the day off is voting for strength with that choice. The person who studies alone when the world is pulling them toward every available distraction is voting for mastery. The person who returns from seasons of deep solitude carrying the weight of everything they built in private is not merely different. They are transformed. They are unrecognizable. And the world does not quite know what to do with someone like that, because the world was never designed to produce them. You have to produce yourself. In silence. In discipline. In fire. This is what the Stoic code was always pointing toward. Not a life of cold detachment or joyless suffering. A life of deep, intentional, irreversible becoming. You train alone so that you meet yourself without an audience to perform for. You study alone so that your mind becomes genuinely yours, and not a reflection of everyone else's noise. You return as a menace not because you have become aggressive or cold, but because you have become completely undeniable. The combination of these four lessons, solitude as a laboratory, suffering as a method, presence as power, and character as identity, creates something that cannot be faked and cannot be taken from you. It creates a person who has been built entirely from the inside out. And that person quietly changes every room they walk into. If this video reached something real inside you, if even one sentence felt like it was written specifically for you, then you already carry what it takes to become unrecognizable. Subscribe to Anonymous Achiever, because what we build here together is not motivation. It is transformation. Tell me in the comments, what are you building in silence right now? Because someone out there needs to hear it. And always remember this, the most dangerous person in any room is the one who built themselves when absolutely no one was watching.